It's so funny to me how many law firm owners set these goals for whatever reason. I want to be $1 million firm. I want to have this. I want to have that. And I always try and push people about you actually then need to do the habits. Like, what are the small day-to-day things I can to get there? But what I've never heard anybody talk about before, and what I am so excited to talk with Ryan McKeen on today, is what do you do after you've hit those goals? How do you fight off some of that emotional pull? How do you find the motivation still? How do you set the next goal? What do you do after you found success? For those of you that don't know Ryan McKeen, one, you totally should. Sometimes I find myself in situations thinking, what would Ryan do? And, either I've been right or I've done the right thing anyway. It's never gone wrong for me. So for those who don't know, Ryan is the co-founder and CEO of the Connecticut trial firm. As a trial lawyer, he has obtained a $100 million verdict. And that might be the biggest feather in his cap, but it's by no means the only feather in his cap. He's, as a business owner, has grown one of the fastest growing law firms in the country. He has coached a number of other attorneys. He has been the accountability partner for some other amazing attorneys. There's literally dozens of people that I talk to all the time that consistently sing your praises, me being one of them. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Jordan, thank you so much for having me on.
And you also have the coolest story of starting a different firm with partners, having it not go well, but then now reconnecting with those partners in different ways to bring everything back together full circle and get back to being friends. It's just a fascinating story to follow all this.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great source of joy in my life. I think probably like many people who want to start their own firm, maybe they're an associate someplace and they think, I don't know, I don't know how to do it myself. Being solo feels very scary. So my friends Megan and Kristen said, you know what, we'll come along and we'll do this. So they without them saying yes, I don't know if I ever would have made the leap. And it didn't work out. But their firm is wildly successful, family law firm here in Connecticut. We're doing well with personal injury, and time healed a lot of wounds, and we're fortunate to be friends.
What time? When was all this?
Yeah, I think I had a few Bahama Mamas in Bahamas. I was on vacation. I read Steve Jobs' bio and I realized I was just becoming too conservative. And this was like January 2012. And I texted my friend Megan, who had worked at an insurance company. And I said, hey, you want to start a law firm? And that may have well have been like asking her if she wanted to go to Mars, right? And instead of just saying, Ryan, I'm going to keep you on the read, she said, oh, that's interesting. And we started talking about what kind of law firm we wanted to build. So we opened up end of July 2012. Probably by about that winter, we weren't talking anymore. And by that August, I was out of there, August 2013.
So when did Connecticut Trial Firm open?
Connecticut Trial Firm opens in 2016. I was a solo for about 3 years myself. I had McKeen Law Firm. Eventually, my wife joined me as a partner, and we had a little bit of a general practice. I did more litigation. She did some real estate, and we decided to focus just on personal injury. 2016. That's when I partnered with my partner now, Andrew, and we formed Connecticut Trial Firm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because again, this is me not stalking, that's not the right word, but watching you share these things. I believe at some point you set a goal of a $10 million case.
Yeah, well, what we did is we sat down and we did the traction vision worksheet organizer, which I recommend any small business owner do, a law firm owner do. And, we sat there in a bar and we said, well, what is our big, hairy, audacious goal? And our big, hairy, audacious goal was to be the best trial firm in Connecticut. But we're like, how do we, that's not what Gino Wickman lets you do, because you've got to commit to something that you either do or don't do. And as we looked around on other websites and we said, look, a $10 million jury verdict, that puts us in the conversation. So we didn't say a $10 million case, a $10 million settlement. We wanted a $10 million jury verdict. And we set that as our 10-year goal, which was completely audacious to us. I don't think we had a case worth more than $100,000 at the time. And we certainly didn't have a history of verdicts or really a wherewithal or means to achieve such a verdict. But nevertheless, that's what we set out to do.
And was that in 2016?
That was 2017. That was March of 2017.
So I want to go deeper on that, but first, like, so what made you want to do the traction, the VTO? Like, what drew you to that as something to do?
Yeah, I think it was Lee Rosen just sent me the book. I was doing Rosen Institute. He sent me the book and I read it and it made a lot of sense to me. And so we that's when we set our goals for traction. That's when we adopted EOS really at our very beginning, because it seemed like for I was like a solo and I just was floundering around. I was doing different things. I was working hard. It felt like everybody was mad at me. I wasn't able to hire things. I was working constantly. And it just didn't feel sustainable to me. So I knew I needed to do something a lot different. And traction was sort of the means I saw as a way to get to where I wanted to go.
And as much as I would love some sort of healthy debate, literally, I had my leadership team for legalese do the exact same VTO last Friday because I love the document as well. For those of you that don't, it's free online. I think you just need to give an email address. If you Google the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer for Traction, you'll have it. It's 2 pages and it's so freaking cool. Like it really boils so much of the stuff down.
It does. And I mean, you read the first 2 chapters of Traction, I believe, which deal with vision, and that'll give you sort of the reason and the why. The worksheet is a little self-explanatory, but I think if you didn't, you don't even have to read the whole Traction book, but if you're looking to set your vision, I think it's the best thing that I've come across on vision setting and how to do it and what it means.
And so the way this works, you've got you've got your core values in there. You've got really basically an overarching marketing plan in like 5 things. Then you set your 10-year goal, and then you work backwards to 3-year, 1 year,
And quarterly.
Quarterly. Okay.
You do because basically, 3 years is about as far out as anybody can like reasonably see. And then, then you break down that 3-year goal into like, well, what's going to get us there in a year? And then you break it down into quarters. So it's very simple in what it is. But you need
So
the vision because like when I look at vision, Jordan, I mean, you travel, is I look at it as like, where is it that you want to go? And, for example, a trip to Iceland is fantastic. A trip to Hawaii is also fantastic. Completely different places. You're going to pack different things. You may go at different times of year. And so there's no right or wrong answer, but once you say, okay, I'm going to go to Iceland, maybe you start looking at like waterproof gear, winter gear. You start getting a guidebook about what to do in Iceland and things of that nature. So it's really your North Star as a business. And if you don't have a North Star, you're just going to be sort of drifting at sea, or at least that's how I think of it.
Well, I genuinely don't know how you can make a decision without that overarching vision. It's like, hey, here's a new marketing opportunity. Here's a new potential hire. Great. Anything could work out. I don't know enough about where I want to get to know if this gets me there.
Right. And you won't know if you've achieved or not achieved. And it's sort of like just saying like, hey, where do you want to go on vacation? Well, I want to go someplace and have fun. Okay. Well, like what does fun look to you? Fun can come in a lot of different forms. But also I think for your life, it's a little bit more than that because it gives you a point to work backwards from. And I think that's the key thing about any sort of vision. And I would say this, Jordan, I think the most successful people that I've met in this space or in business in general have the clearest vision for where they want to go, where they want to take their company, when they're going to get there, what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like. I mean, like down to seats, down to people in seats, down to revenue projections. I mean, they've got it all down. So I think it's just a key component to your firm achieving something or just kind of treading water.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, from a marketing perspective, I've never talked to any of our clients who had a very strong ideal client avatar and weren't successful on their way to it. I mean, and that to me, that's the vision for marketing just as much as you have the firm vision from the business side.
And you know what, we Envision also helps you make decisions. We have an amazing opportunity for our firm, something that'll be announced in a few, maybe when this airs. But we had an amazing opportunity, but it's a huge amount of money, a huge undertaking. And, we're like, should we do it or should we not? And we're like, hell yeah, because it aligns with our vision. It gets us to where we want to go. Like, this is the exact bet that we want to make. And when we are confronted with other opportunities, we may say, yeah, this takes away, like, and because there's no shortage. If we say we want to be the best trial firm in Connecticut, maybe I don't consider doing something like mass torts, because it's just not what I want to do. It's not what I'm trying to do. It's not where I'm trying to go with the firm, at least not right now.
All right. So it's March 2017. You've set this BHAG of the $10 million verdict. You've got the VTO lined up. Do you remember what some of those rocks were for the first quarter?
Oh yeah, I've got it written down. What we wanted to do was really start building a wiki for our firm, which we did. I wanted to we wanted to stop taking other non-PI cases. We wanted to start exploring the hiring of paralegals to help us. And what we wanted to do was to, really improve, intake processes and intake systems. We focused on how to attract the clients that we wanted to attract with the limited marketing money that we had. And, really started actually in that VTO, started sketching out what would become our tech stack to sort of support us to get there. So those were like the first things. And I mean, one of the things, said like, look, talk to Maria about becoming a paralegal. And I think Maria joined us like a year and a half later. Like those kinds of things. Like we didn't maybe achieve it that quarter, but that was sort of like a yearly goal for us.
So, and that's a really interesting point. Like, so obviously you have a paralegal or you don't, but from the, addressing the intake and building the wiki, how do you know when one of those things is accomplished sufficiently to go off the list or go back down to a later priority versus letting it, having to work on it longer than just a quarter?
I think now we're very much into like, well, measurable and like this and that. There it was just more informal. It was like, okay, I want to improve our intake. Well, what does that look like? Well, I'm going to create a Google form. I'm going to, we didn't have like a CRM at the time. I'm going to create a Google form. I'm going to use Ring Central texting to text it out to clients. I'm going to get a outside reception service, Ruby, to go answer my phones, or those kinds of different things, and sort of like just I would map out like 2 or 3 things that would sort of move that needle at that time.
Gotcha. Yeah, I go back to, are you familiar with SMART goals?
Yes, exactly. Exactly that.
Yeah, and so for specific, measurable, achievable, related, and time bound. So like the 5 things of a good goal, which goes to exactly what Ryan said, like a very specific metric-driven decision, as opposed to like, I want better intake. Like that's hard to, or I want to be the best trial attorney, breaking it down into that, $10 million verdict within 10 years.
Yep. Exactly. The more specific you are, the more you're going to achieve. The clearer you are in what you want to do and what it takes to get there, the more you're going to achieve. And I sort of think about it like if you're like making a recipe and you just, if you measure the stuff out correctly and you know what it is that you want to make, like it's not rocket science. If you just say, hey, I'm going to make a great steak, and okay, I'm going to throw some butter in a pan, I'm going to set it to 425, I'm going to, like maybe not, right? But there are ways to which to do things, and being able to work backwards and work clearly is very important.
All right. So here's where I'm going to get a bit fuzzy and lean on you. You set this in March of 2017. When everybody's listening to this, we're talking April 2023. So we're in this 6 years. What would be like the 2 or 3 biggest moments, inflection points, decisions that you made over that time frame to go from setting that vision there to ultimately achieving it with the case?
Yeah, 2 things on this one. One of which was actually getting funding for our case expenses. We decided to use an outfit that would lend to us to fund expert fees, which became very, very, very important because, a lot of times if you can get experts in early, that's going to help shape your discovery. That's going to help do a whole bunch of things. Also, if you get the best experts, you're precluding the defense from being able to do that. And so what we used to do is we used to operate before, like, okay, we had this case settle. All right, we can take $10,000 and move it to this expert on this other case. But now this allowed us to be proactive. And it also allowed us not to rob our business of money that we could use to hire. Instead of tying up $50,000 in expert fees, we're like, hey, we can fund that through a funding company, and then we can use that $50,000 for paras to go work the files, right? So decision number one was to use leverage in terms of money, and decision number two was to use leverage in terms of talent.
Can you go a little bit deeper on that talent?
Yeah, when we set that vision out, I just had a part-time paralegal for 9 hours a week, and a part-time paralegal for 9 hours a week is not going to carry you to a $10 million verdict or $100 million verdict, most likely. There's just a whole bunch that needs to go on, especially over the course of 5 years of litigation, that you need some real help on. So the decision to go from what I would consider like what the way in which a lot of lawyers operate, which is like a lawyer with some help, to an actual business, an actual firm. We're like, hey, you know what? We if we hire a litigation paralegal, we don't want all of her time even taken up with like intake and secretarial work. So we're going to hire an intake specialist as well. So we made the decision to hire two people who, immediately help take things off our plate so we could focus on what was important, which was trying to get that verdict and move that case.
So, and it's so interesting. My wife is my business partner in my law firm. And one, I love her to death. Two, it's a great fit business wise. Because if it were me, I would and have spent way more money than we've ever had into debt. For her, she's a lot more hesitant on money. So anytime we're both aligned on how to spend it, I know I'm 100% correct. Other than that, it's, deciding it. So how do you help convince that lawyer to spend the right money at the right time in the right way? Like, what's the analysis that you all went through?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think if anything, we were probably too cautious. But when we signed the case in September, we met Mikey Cruz in September of 2017. We knew that the case had the potential to be very significant. You have a paralyzed man, you have corporate defendants, and the question is sort of like, well, what all happened here? What is the liability picture, and what are the damages? I mean, so it's no small task, but you can, if you do injury work, you can understand that this was a big case. Doesn't take rocket scientists to figure that one out. But how big was a very big question, and our obligation to him and our commitment to him to prove it was a very big deal. So I think it really, in that measure, like it forced our hand, because if you're going to do something really big and something really important, what you really need to do is you need to create the space for yourself to do that. And you can't do it if you're getting ground down with, discovery on other standard motor vehicle packages. If you're getting ground down by scanning mail or paying bills. So it was those decisions that we brought on Sarah, the paralegal, Jackie, the intake specialist, and we brought on my wife, Allison, who was our COO today. She was handling our finance. She was handling, the administrative things of getting people on board. And that allowed us to focus on the really important legal work.
So, sorry, I don't know. You said September of 2017 is when you first got this case?
Yep.
Okay, so you start in March of 2017. This case comes in September.
Correct.
Right. Tell me a little bit of the story of the marketing for this case. Like, what got this case in the door?
Yeah, we knew very much that we didn't have money to compete. Really, like, we weren't on TV, we weren't on radio, we didn't have money on Google, we just didn't have money. So the challenge for us was to figure out the best way to get a case like that. And so what we started doing was we started going to really good trial schools, McKeen Trial Institute in Atlanta, and we started just learning our craft from amazing lawyers and amazing teachers. And we actually named ourselves Connecticut Trial Firm so that those great lawyers would say, "Oh, the Connecticut guys." Like that was actually the genesis of the name, because we knew our best chance to get good cases was going to come through referrals. And then I think the most important thing in actually landing this case was just sharing that vision with others. So this case came to us from my friend Jay Ruane, and Jay and I were talking. We both have kids, both live in Connecticut, both own law firms. He does criminal, I do PI, and we're talking about the challenges of a firm and all this. And I kept telling him, I'm like, we're just so passionate about what we're doing with this trial and like what we're building. And so the case came into him, and he said, look, I've got two top guys who can handle this, and referred it to us because he knew we were serious and we were going to do a right job for this client.
I love that. I mean, I love your hidden vision as like the first step you'll head toward this. Your hidden vision on sharing it with Jay being the thing to make you memorable for the case. I mean, it's funny to see the consistency there.
Well, and I think that's it, because if you don't have your vision, like your vision informs your marketing, Jordan. And it's like I think it's really hard to be sort of like beyond generic firm when you're, if we're just like, hey, we want to be a car accident firm, like that doesn't land that case. But hey, we want a $10 million verdict. We want to be the best. We want to be the go-to guys in Connecticut. That's something that Jay pays attention to, or anybody else does, because it sticks.
Well, and I love it. I don't remember what book, but they were talking about Skadden Arps, the firm in New York, and their biggest thing being like the merger and acquisition thing. And so for anything else business related, everybody kept thinking, well, if they're the go-to for business mergers, they can certainly do a great job on this slightly easier thing or whatnot. From your standpoint, I think you position yourself as, hey, if they're the $10 million verdict guys, they're going to crush it on a $1 million case or a $500,000 case or whatever. It's just like such a great positioning, vision, statement, whatever you want to call it.
Or a $10,000 case. I mean, like we have plenty of those. Like it's just it's committing to that vision. I think that's really important.
So as this case goes on, 5 years of litigation, what are the most important things for us to touch on as the case is working towards a verdict?
One of which is that you have to create space for that case, because there's always going to, like, life is weird in the sense that you need to do something and everything tries to cut against you doing that one thing. Like everything, it's just like anything. It could be like me trying to get out in the morning and like, my dog won't come back inside or something. Like everything tries to cut into like the thing you're trying to do. But what you need to do as much as possible is isolate for the important. So what we did is we developed a linear workflow. So my partner, Andrew, got tasked with like leading the case. And I was co-counseling it with him and helping him. And I did things like depositions and a lot of strategy, and ended up doing jury selection and trial and things like that with him. But I said, okay, Andrew, I'm going to take intake. I'm going to take pre-litigation. And we're going to hire another litigation attorney to replace me in litigation. And I'm going to also handle the sort of executive function of the firm. In the business side of things, because what I really want you to do is focus on this Cruz case, because that is our chance. Like this is our case. Like this is our moment. We owe it to this man. We love this man, and we're not going to miss it. So we created sort of a business structure where we pared down his caseload very significantly, and we allowed him to just basically live Mikey Cruz and keep the money coming in, to keep him paid, to keep the lights on. And it's not to say he didn't do other cases, but we really tried to pare that down for him, because that was what was important.
How did you make that decision though? Like in terms of splitting the two of you in those directions, like where did that come about?
It really came about, I think, for our visions for ourselves. My thing was at the time, like I love trial work. I love doing trial work. I'm not done with trying cases for sure, but I've been at this for almost 20 years now, and like my desire to have an impact the way I could best have it is by not being in the courtroom and building an organization and building a firm and coaching lawyers in my firm and connecting the things and putting the pieces in place. Like that was a challenge that really excited me. And he's younger than me, and his real challenge was like, I want to be a trial lawyer. And I'm like, awesome. And so that those sort of two personal visions, I think, melded into helping to produce this result.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And I mentioned earlier with my wife being my business partner, our split, me being much more similar to you, her being much more similar to Andrew.
Yep.
Only she's been a lawyer longer than me. So other than that one, and I will tell you, to anybody listening and watching, and I'm sure Ryan will echo this. When you have partners, having the split that you're not stepping on each other's toes, where not everybody's doing everything, becomes the easiest chance to success, as opposed to the firm where everybody does the same stuff and then you have to keep out of everybody's way.
Oh yeah, no question, because you need to be able to move quickly, and again, you need to be able to make decisions, and you need to be able to focus. I guess ultimately, really focus on what it is that you're sort of best at, and what it is that I say that because I don't think you can get great at something if you're not really passionate about it. And it's like, what, it's like for me at the moment, it was like I had done so much as a lawyer, and I'm like, I want a sort of a different challenge. And this was a challenge for me.
So talking about passion, talking about that vision, even with all of that stuff in this 5 years, ever any doubt that creeps in about we're not going to do this the right way, or second thoughts about the overarching vision, or any of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, look, we made a serious obligation and a serious investment. We ended up investing over $350,000 in cost into this case, and years and years worth of work. And more importantly than I think the money for either of us was, we had a paralyzed guy who trusted us with the rest of his life. And we made promises to him that we would leave no stone unturned. And we kept those promises to him. And that was, I think, the most important thing. And I think that was the thing that weighed on us the most, because it's like, if we miss for him, like we messed up the rest of his life. Like he had a bad day and he turned to us to make it better. And if we didn't hit, he might live in poverty the rest of his life, not get the medical care, might not have money for food. And I think to us that was a huge motivator. But it also, that fear is a real gift, because that fear forced us to get better. We ran more focus groups. We even hired a retired judge who judged complex cases, mediates complex cases. And we're like, here, we're going to have you vet this case for us. Like, we're going to make arguments to you. Like, what are we missing? We consulted with defense lawyers from around the country, plaintiffs lawyers from around the country. And so we had to really assemble that team to get those perspectives, because there's always that, like, well, what am I missing? What am I not understanding? What's going to bite me in this? And so it led to us doing an immense amount of work, and it led to us outworking the defendants like a gajillion to one, and knowing the case way better than they did, which was something that was surprising to me, because look, they're multi-billion-dollar multinational conglomerate corporation who has a lot of resources at their disposal.
I love that answer. I mean, that is so, for those of you that know Ryan, or for those of you that don't, that is so Ryan. That is such the honest answer. That is such the true caring lawyer that we all, hope to be or embody and pass on to clients. Was there a time though where you had to sort of balance that? Like, I think especially from the criminal defense or the PI standpoint, I see so many of our colleagues taking on the problem to the extent that they can't solve it and grinding themselves down into dust. So did you all have to balance that somewhat, or was it just, you were just so passionate about it that it kind of pushed through that?
We played all in. Like, I mean, there was never any doubt. And there was never any doubt to us that we weren't going to prepare to try this case. And all along, people would tell us this case is going to settle. They're going to pay. It's going to settle. And we're like, you know what? I don't know. And we're like, we're preparing this case from day one. Like, we are going to take a jury verdict on it. And so, and obviously, like, I mean, you have to do focus groups. You have to know what is going on, and you can't ignore the risk. Like, I don't like, we wrestled with that risk forever. But it was a commitment that we made to either they're going to pay us $20 million or they're going to take a verdict. That is their whole choice. We're not selling this for 10 million. We're not selling this for 12. We're not settling it for 19.5. $20 million from you, Philip Signify, or you're going to get it. We're going to get it from a jury. That was the attitude that we took, because we felt that that's what the case was worth. We felt the case was worth more than that, but that's what they disclosed as their insurance policy, which was nonsense in the end, because that after we hit the verdict, they then disclosed $150 million insurance policy. But I guess the answer to that was like, no, our mindset is like, this is, but it gets back to that vision. It gets back to like, we want a $10 million verdict, and well, we're going to go to trial school, and we kept investing in getting better resources and better workshops and investing in our skills over and over. We would try cases and we would learn things. So we got a lot better along this journey because it's what we wanted to do. And like, I don't want anybody to leave this and think like, well, we took a verdict because we wanted this vision. It was no. I mean, had they offered us $20 million, we would have settled this case. We also would not have achieved our vision. Okay. But they only ever offered us $1.5 million. So that was a very easy, no-brainer decision for us to take that verdict.
And for anybody listening to this or watching this who is not a PI lawyer, there are those cases where part of you kind of wants them to never put enough money on the table. There are certainly way outweighed by the number of cases where you're like, I don't understand why they won't put anything down here. But like every now and then there's that one where you're just like, come on, don't tender, don't put it there.
Well, you know what? What's funny is I got an email the Sunday before we closed from defense counsel, and he said, Ryan, I'd like to talk to you. Do you have a time at 4:00 today? And I said, well, okay. And this is, we've been on trial we started picking a jury in August. Like, this is now October, like 1st, 2nd. Like, so we've been at this for a long time. And I get the email and I go, oh shit. Can I swear on your podcast?
Yeah, it's fine. We just tagged a little explicit.
Okay. I said,
be real,
because I'm like, we got these guys. I'm like, I kept texting my friends. I'm like, we're going to hit them for 100 million. We're going to hit them for 100 million.
Oh, really? And so like literally,
I have the receipts on this, Jordan. I have the receipts. And I'm like, we're going to hit them for 100 million bucks. And so I got this thing and I was like, oh God, they're going to offer like a low of 10 million and a high of 20, like do some sort of like binding arb based upon the jury verdict. So they called me at 4:00 and he says, Ryan, I've talked this over and the insurance company wants to resolve this. Okay. And he's like, well, we have a proposal, a low of 1 million and a high of 4. And I just I started laughing. Like, I was just like, okay, you would think I'm like, I was professional, but I was like, okay, thank you very much, Chris. But look, we're up against it. I have to take it back to my client, but I can tell you this is going to be a no. I'll talk to my client and I'll respond to you, but I don't want to waste anybody's time here. And that was it. That was the only other conversation. The only hard offer we had was 1.5, but we were scared like it was going to get taken away from us. I mean, again, even if they had offered like $15 million, like that's a lot of money. My client's got to think about that. We have to think about that.
Yeah, I have one of my mentors tells a story of one of his mentors who I think his number was like 41 million on some case, and they put like 40 on the table, and he was like, "Gentlemen, I told you 41." And I'm like, "Good God, it's there are those moments where you just have to obviously consult with the client and get their opinion, but like genuinely, if the client asks for any input from you, there's sometimes where they get so close to that number that it makes it a lot harder. But with 1 to 4 on a case that your low is 20 going into it, and obviously 100 million coming out of it. I mean, that's an easy no, I think.
Oh yeah,
which is a crazy concept. Like, yeah, $1 to $4 million. Nah, no problem. Don't even need to think about it that long.
It was a great gift.
So anything else before we talk about like the verdict hits and afterwards?
I, I think we covered it as well as I can on a podcast.
Uh, Listen, man, I've learned a ton. This has been great so far. And yet we now are finally in the moment that like I have never heard anybody talk about what I want to hit on now. You've got this vision for 10 million, you hit the 100 million, you got that, and then what? Like walk me through the thought process, walk me through the emotions that come in after achieving this vision.
I mean, first of all, the emotions immediately, like I sat there when the judge read the verdict in court, just sobbing, and it's right up there with my wedding, birth of my kids, and like this verdict. Like it is that big of a life moment, and because you're sitting there and you're hearing the verdict and you realize like my life has changed, like the world has changed in some way, and that's like a profound, overwhelming feeling. And you know but like there was no rest, because I also run the business side of things, and what we were trying to do was, we built up a whole marketing campaign, like CTF wins. We bought 877 CTF wins. We're trying to do a whole year of different wins, and this we thought was going to be our big win. And when it happened, it was like, okay, I got to deal with an influx of media. Like I've got to seize this moment for something bigger, which is what we spent a lot of time doing for I guess now the past 6 months since the verdict is hit, which is really trying to, like, okay, we're sort of like holding on to the rocket ship, and we're like, okay, we're going to steer it to the way we want to steer it to. So it resulted in a lot of work, and again, like there's a lot of emotion that goes behind it. In a lot of ways, it's a little bit weird. And again, I haven't also been paid this. Like they're fighting post judgment motions and appeal. Like this will go on for a bit. So like your life both changes profoundly and doesn't really change at all. Like it's like in some respects. So it's a little bit disorienting. And I think what we tried to do was, we had to focus on like where do we want this to go? What's going to help get us to the next steps? Like what opportunities do we have now? What do we want to do? And ultimately, that has led to me doing vision work actually over the past I'd say 6 weeks with my team, trying to set that next BHAG as we've sort of come through some of this.
So yeah, it's interesting. I go back to you ever read Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown? It talks about all the different emotions humans can feel and like gets the science behind it. And bittersweet becomes like the most interesting one, where you have the last time you ever pick up your kids or dropping them off for college, or having this 5-year case and hitting it. Like it's a fascinating way to have that like happiness, but also that got to keep my foot on the gas, or got to keep going, or got to still fight whatever emotions are coming up afterwards as well. Like walk me through kind of how you have processed that individually and as a firm.
Yeah, I don't think I have processed it actually. I mean, I think it's been like I haven't had a break. It's been go, 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 go. It's been making progressively bigger and bolder decisions about the future of the firm, bigger and bolder bets about the firm. So it's been a lot of like sort of like nose to the grindstone and just pushing these buttons, because it's a rare opportunity that's not going to come along again, and not afforded to everyone. And we want to, I want to be able to look back on this time and be like, all right, I did those things that set this firm up to do a whole bunch more things in the future. I use this sort of window that we have.
But did you, I mean, you haven't, let me phrase this the right way. Like, did you find like a sap to motivation? We've set this for so long, we're here, or is it just because it's given you so much opportunity that you can raise all that vision up to the next level? Or like, is there sort of a downside to hitting this goal, 6 years later?
No, there's absolutely absolutely zero downside. Absolutely not. I mean, for us, as I sort of like lead the firm or lead the team, I kept saying to everybody, even before the verdict, that the cruise case is not the end of something; it is the beginning. It is the beginning of things. So we all, at least I always looked at that and shared that message with anybody who would listen to me on our team. This is the beginning. This is the beginning. This is the beginning. And it increases our capacity to do the things that we want to do, to help more people, to have more of an impact, to bring aboard more talented lawyers, to bring upon talented team members, and grow something really something to be proud of. And so I don't think I ever looked at it that way. I don't think my team has either.
Well, I mean, I love the way that I love the way you phrase it for them from day one. I mean, in essence, being in Orlando, I'm thinking from a rocket ship standpoint, this is the first booster deploying. It got it up that much, but there's still a rocket ship that's got to get into outer space, or whatever analogy you want to use there.
I tell my team every single day, I'm like, this is as bad as we'll ever be. Like tomorrow, like we're gonna get better today, better tomorrow, better, better, better. And it's true. We do. We find ways every single day, big and small, to get better.
Let me phrase this, I guess maybe selfish isn't the right word, but that's one that comes to mind. What impact has this had on you? I mean, I love the way you frame this with the firm, but like you, Ryan, sitting here, how do you feel like this has changed you?
Really and truly, what it allows me to do is I think a lot less when I want to buy a baseball card on eBay of like Pedro Martinez or David Ortiz. That's probably the single biggest difference. I'm like, oh, cool card. All right, I'll spend the $60. Like, I don't know that it has I don't know that it has changed me in any sort of like material way. I think it as a person, it has emboldened me to set bigger goals, take bigger risks, do bigger things, and not be terrified of them. And I say this because it's like, man, this weekend, like we are going huge into marketing. Actually, there's a TV crew here right now filming us. Like I'm in between being filmed, and we are also we are adding a whole new department to our firm to handle medical malpractice, and this involves bringing on like a top flight lawyer who's paid like a top flight lawyer and a paralegal. I'm talking like huge money. And you know what? I'm signing a contract to buy an office next door. And it's all of these things that have gone on that would have, any one of which would have terrified me. But now it's like, okay, you know what? If we're gonna make smart bets, we're gonna make bigger bets, and they're gonna probably pay off. Because if anything, I think what I've learned was we bet our BHAG was too small. Like we made too small of a BHAG. Like, and so for our next BHAG, like it's got to be even bigger. And I think I was limited by thinking small.
It's amazing that obviously, so the A and B HAG is audacious. So when I say that you set this audacious goal, I don't mean that offensively. I mean that as, being the A here. And so you're sitting there in the $10 million audacious goal, and then you're telling me it's too small. I love hearing that as the story comes full circle.
Yeah, as evidenced by we 10x'd it in half the time. I mean, it's just like, so I think if you're out there and you're doing this vision work and you take anything from this podcast, and again, like there's nothing, I mean, a $10 million verdict might as well have been said, I want to be a Martian astronaut, because like I had no money, I had no marketing budget, I had no employees, I was a good lawyer. I had some idea of what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to do, but set your goal really high, really high. Why not? Like if you're going to achieve something, why not make it great?
I love that. And look, I have to imagine this as a positive for who you are, and as a positive for anybody who feels the same way. It's the fact that it hasn't changed you is probably part of the reason why you were able to hit it so quickly and for so much more.
Yeah, I think you should spend a lot of time if you're doing this, if you're on an entrepreneurial journey or law firm journey, knowing yourself and knowing what motivates you, what doesn't motivate you, whether it's through coaching and therapy. We even turned an employment consultant loose on us to sort of tell us where we're good, where we're not. What things we struggle with and maybe why. But I think it's like if you do a lot of grounding behavior in that a lot of grounding activity, like that does pay off, because it's sort of like a Gary V thing where it's like, he always talks about, you don't hear the boos, you don't hear the cheers. And it's really that. It's just like, okay, here's the next thing I need to do. Like, thank you for applauding. You don't like what I do, fine. Like, I don't care. But because it's just like, here's the next thing for what I'm trying to do.
So what do you, I'm going to jump on, you mentioned like what motivates you. So what motivates you? Like, what is it that keeps you going to set that next level of BHAG, I guess?
I just think it's sort of like who I am. And I feel like my whole life is built for this moment. Look, I was the first in my family to go to a 4-year school. I went to law school. I didn't know any lawyers growing up. I worked for a firm that nobody ever heard of. I failed a partnership. I was a solo. And I sort of have learned all these lessons along the way. So I sort of feel like, I sometimes think of like Regis Philbin, which is funny to me because Regis, the sort of story is like Regis works as like a page, and Regis like does all these like, the 1 a.m. show and like the this and that. And then it's like Regis hits it big when he's like 50 years old. And then like that's when he gets like his Regis and Kathy Lee show. And like that's when he hits it big. And that guy just loves every second of what he's doing for like the rest of his career. Like he's happy to be there. And I think for me, like I'm happy to be here. I've got more to grow. I've got more to give. I've got more to do. I've got more people to help. And I'm really happy about that. So it's, when people say, I know you're down in Florida, but I know people say like, Tom Brady and retiring from football, is he going to come back? Is he not? Like, I totally get why that guy doesn't retire, because it's like, why would you? Like, if that's what you love to do, like, why don't you want to be out there on Sunday? And I sort of feel the same way. Like, it's like I'm compelled to do it.
Is there, oh man, dude, there's so much wisdom here for me. There's so much motivation dropped here for me. Do you think, like, I'm compelled, like the line, I'm compelled to do it? If there are lawyers here struggling with what they're doing or not sure if it's their passion, is that something that was that something that was immediately obvious to you in terms of what you were compelled to do? Or is that something that you've learned to love over time? Or like, is there a way for them to fight through to find the passion?
I think some things like, look, I don't think like I was like, I came out of the womb like wanting to be a trial lawyer and run a law firm, right? So I have to try different things, and there are different things I liked, and there are different things in law that I liked and didn't like. But I liked doing trial work. I liked the challenge of building a business. I'm like sort of a builder, by not a physical builder of things, but I'm a builder of different things. So like I found my passion along the way, because I think if it's something you either know or you don't know, it's either right or not wrong. And if you haven't, like the Steve Jobs thing, it's like, if you haven't found what you're looking for, like keep searching, because there is that thing. And when you find it, and so what I would say to you is just, be honest with yourself, be honest, because there's going to be times that you're going to have to push through. There's going to be huge doubts. I mean, during COVID, our revenues went down 50% because our courts closed. When you're a trial firm and your courts aren't open, like you can't move your cases. That's not fun. Especially as you're ramping up expenses on a huge case, right? So I think it's, Jordan, you know what, like find your passion, and also be accepting that your passion over time may change. There may be new opportunities for you. There may be new things, but when you find that thing, like it just, I think for me, it creates like a flow state of like, this is what I love to do. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm good at. It sort of checks all those boxes.
So let me at the flow state. I mean, it's so interesting. Like you go back to like Simon Sinek talking about the way that our brain is structured, our decision making and our linguistic center are like don't talk to each other. And so putting some of those so explaining why we make decisions can be so tough. I love that you lean it back to that flow state, because I think it's so true. Like finding that thing that is just hard enough to enjoy the challenge and just passionate enough to fight through when it is slightly harder becomes so important, even though it's really tough to stay in, because now, you've expanded your abilities. So what is slightly harder to keep in that flow state is slightly different.
Right. Right. But there's just also like, it's sort of like a mountain you keep climbing, you see new vistas out there, right? And so there were things that you couldn't do before that you can do now. And I think it just all gets more exciting.
Makes sense. All right. So we're almost out on time. I don't want to hold you up from filming. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we cover?
No, I mean, I think Jordan, it's been a great conversation. And, look, if you're out there too, like, part of your vision, like it has to be marketing. Like we never get there if we don't get the case. So figure out how to get those cases and do smart things and listen to people like Jordan who can help you get there.
Well, thank you. I'll make sure we pull that audio out. No, but it's so true. And the more that you like going back to that vision or going back to who you truly are, going back to that passion, allows you to show up in the right places and in the right way to attract the right kind of clients that vibe with who you are. I imagine how many firms this case could have gone to that would have made it into a $1 to $4 million case, by not turning over the leaf, by rushing through some of the stuff, by not looking at it as a trial case from day one. Like it's this crazy butterfly effect of getting it to where it deserves to be.
And you know what? Our client was, he was blue collar. And I think for both Andrew grew up in public housing. I grew up middle class. My parents, I'm first in my family to go to, 4-year school and that kind of thing. I think it helped us connect with him because we weren't like children of lawyers and out of touch. Like it was like, hey, and you were a paper boy growing up. I was a paper boy growing up, and that kind of thing. I think helped us tell his story and understand it. It actually helped us fight for him because we knew the loss. And the defense side was kind of like, well, this guy's just he's just a Puerto Rican warehouse worker and his life's not worth much. And we're like, oh no, hell no. We're gonna show you that it is.
Crazy. All right. So for anybody who's been listening to this for the last hour, remembers nothing else you said, what would be the most important takeaway, or what's the piece of advice you want to give to as many lawyers as possible to help them be the exhibit A of a successful attorney such as yourself?
Your dreams are probably too small. Dream bigger, whatever that is that looks like for you. Don't apologize for it. Believe in yourself and do the work. And none of what we did was rocket science. I am not a person with a lot of original ideas. You don't need to be original. You need to find people who know what they're doing and then execute on that thing. The real value is in the vision and the execution of that vision. And to me, like there's no magic about this. So don't look at me or look at some other trial lawyer, look at some big successful law firm business owner and think like, wow, they must have some magic touch. They don't. There is no magic. It is all in rolling up your sleeves and getting the work done and pushing through and believing.
I love it. Oh, sorry, did I cut you off?
No, go ahead. Nope.
Thank you, Ryan, so much for being here. Thank you to everybody who's watched or listened to this. I know, as I tell in every episode, if I've got a page of notes, I know it went really well, and I am forcing myself to stay on just one page. So I hope you all got a ton out of it. I know you did. I know I did. And we'll see you back here next Thursday, 6 p.m. for the next episode of Exhibit A Attorneys, where we interview attorneys and other experts across the country to talk about what it truly takes to be the Exhibit A of a successful lawyer. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Exhibit A Attorneys. If you're interested in becoming the Exhibit A of a successful attorney, please check us out at legalesemarketing.com, EASE.